Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Lifestyle Practice Podcast. Glad you're joining in this week with us. You've got Steve Vandegraff and the Dr. Derek Williams coming back to continue what we started talking about last time, topics of personal freedom, exiting dentistry, exploring new chapters in life. So, super excited to talk about this with you guys. First of all, Derek, how are you?
Doing great, Steve. Any chance I get to just riff with you is exceptional.
Riff. I like that. Did you play tennis or golf today?
Tennis.
Tennis. Okay. Do you still play with like senior citizens?
This is yes, most of the people that I hang out with on a daily basis are guys that are retired. So on the weekends I don't stay up late enough to play with some people that are my age. So yes, the guy that I play with the most, he's 67. I'm 37. He's 30 years older than me. He's been playing tennis since high school, and I really just started in the last 4 months or so. And I am now at his level where we're pretty even back and forth. So there's two different ways to look at that. Like, hey, I'm doing pretty good for being able to play against someone that's been playing for 50 years. But on the other hand, I still get my butt kicked by a guy that's 30 years older than me, too.
Yeah. No, I bet that he's probably a solid player. I mean, for the record, I've played tennis with Derek once before. He's very humble right now. I'm sure he is like cooking all these older guys and kind of cleaning up shop. But that's also cool that you get to learn from some older pros.
It's fun. I love it.
All right, let's jump in. So we spoke a little bit last episode about kind of our mindset towards financial independence or moving away from dentistry and going out on a massive kind of once in a life trip. And we're going to talk more specifically about what that looked like, the trips themselves and the things that we've learned from them. This first one, I'll be asking most of the questions to Derek. I mean, I think you gave an episode or two, maybe like a year, maybe 2 years ago. But for people, maybe we get a lot of new listeners. Maybe tell us just briefly what was your big trip that you did 2 years ago. Tell us maybe a little summary up front of your travels.
Yeah. So if you haven't listened to the episode yet where Steve and I talked about financial independence and preparing ourselves to exit clinical dentistry, go back and listen to that, because we did talk a good amount about thoughts and vision and working towards that and stuff like that. So to summarize my things in a whole, I sold my practice in May of 2023, and then we sold our home basically 30 days later and hit the road in June of 2023. And
22, right?
nope, 2023.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I apologize.
And we had the idea of traveling for 1 year, going around the United States. We were going to focus on the East because we were planning to move back to Utah, and we thought, oh, we'll go back and we can do other trips in the West. Well, we started out on that, and about 6 months in, we were enjoying it so much, we were like, hey, let's just do another loop and another year. So we did, it wasn't a total, it was like 21, 22 months, but we basically did a big loop. Like if you picture an infinity symbol and put it on the United States map, that's basically what we did. So we took a year doing a loop in the eastern United States, and then another year doing a loop in the West.
Yeah. East or West, what's better? Offend half of our audience, please.
Up in that far. Well, so I grew up in Utah, and I had been to California and Oregon, Washington, Nevada, Colorado. So I had seen a lot of the states in the West, growing up in some respect. And I had seen very little of the states in the Eastern United States. So if I had to summarize my experience relatively quickly, it's the Eastern United States was very cool for me. I loved the coast. I loved the culture. I loved seeing the historical sites. It kind of came to life. Like the U.S. history and the American Revolution and everything was kind of more of a story in a book.
Hmm.
And when I was able to go and visit the sites, it was very humbling. Like even now, I just got the chills talking about it. It was very cool to be in those places and be like, wow, okay, this place is real. These battles were real. These people were real. This really happened. So the Eastern United States for me was much more cultural type of experience.
Hmm.
West was much more focused on national parks and experiencing some of those things. And I loved both of them, but those are the things that kind of stand out east compared to west.
Yeah, that's cool. A little history buff on the East. That's great. I'm curious. So maybe you could just tell us, what was it like when you sold your practice, you sold your home, and then you got, what was it like? You just like were in your driveway, you got your kids in the RV and your van, and you just started driving away. Like, do you remember what that moment was like? Your first steps on this journey of yours?
Yeah, it was it was scary. Um it was a bittersweet moment. Um I'm getting emotional. Like when we were selling our house and going through everything, and we were cleaning everything out, I took a video to go through all the rooms to kind of remember it and share some thoughts. And it was like, oh man, I have spent hours and hours in these rooms reading to my kids, doing nighttime. We've had sleepovers and done all of these things. And so it was, any of those moments where you're kind of leaving one phase and moving on to the next. I was a little bit sad. Like I was happy, of course, that we're doing something, but it was a little bit of a tender moment where it's like, we're leaving the phase where our kids are little and we're moving on to something different. My wife took a video of me pulling the truck out with the trailer for the last time leaving our home. And I think the thoughts going through my head at that time were a combination of a lot of things. But I was scared. Okay, are we really like, we're not going to have a home? Like, we're going to live in this moving trailer on wheels where we're dependent on hooking up for power and getting water. Like, I could get in a wreck, and like, what are we going to do? How are we going to manage things? Like, am I going to be able to navigate all the roads where, I don't know where I'm going? I got this 45-foot thing behind me. So it was, there was a good amount of fear and like a feeling of unknown, but there was also kind of this quiet confidence too. Like, okay, yeah, I'm really scared and intimidated, but kind of like you shared on the last episode of having butterflies of the same feeling when you sold your practices when you bought it. It was a similar experience. And so over the years, I've learned to be a little bit more calm during those times of when there's a little bit of fear, because I've been there enough to know that the fear is not a bad thing, and there are still almost always better things on the other side of it. So, yeah,
Yeah,
combination of a lot of different thoughts and feelings.
that's cool. You articulated that well. So difficult closing a chapter, exciting, and a little bit nerve wracking to start a new one on the road. I mean,
Yeah.
you mentioned the RV and just driving this thing around. Could you just tell us what it looks like living in an RV and moving from place to place? Most people, they think of being stuck in a van, right? Maybe just give us like a little peek of what that's actually like, just the day to day logistics.
Yeah. So when we were deciding what to buy, a motorhome versus a fifth wheel, there were a number of different things that we considered, but we ended up getting a fifth wheel. One of the downsides was I have 5 kids, and so there's 7 of us. So there are no trucks that are stock that we could fit our whole family in. So the only thing logistically was I even looked at getting a stretched truck that would have an extra cab. But in that situation, the truck becomes heavier and your towing capacity is decreased. So in that situation, I wouldn't be able to pull our trailer without getting like a semi type of a truck. And I even looked into the possibility of getting a semi, but that it was
That would have been
my
so good.
Jenny did not want to go grocery shopping and have to drive a semi and pull it to the back of the parking lot. So we ended up where I
Wow.
drove a dually. It's a Ram 1 ton pickup dually pulling the fifth wheel, and then my wife in the minivan. So what it looks like on a kind of a weekly basis, like we typically had our moving day on Wednesdays. Every Wednesday, we would move and go somewhere different. We picked that day because it would be less busy, there'd be less in and out, less traffic, so that ideally it would make it a little bit easier of a moving day. So typically in the mornings on Wednesday, we would still get up, go to the gym, come back. We'd be back by, 7 or 8. We would have breakfast and then we would pack up. And packing up didn't take too long, probably 45 minutes. But we all had bikes. We had stuff outside. The RV that we had, it was a toy hauler. So the back is basically a big garage. We can put the beds up on a jack system. They're like queen bunk beds, and we could put them to the ceiling, put all of the bikes. We had a Blackstone grill and propane. We had a fire pit. So I could put a lot of the stuff in there, and then anything extra I could put in the back in the bed of the truck. We'd hook up, close all the slides, and typically I would leave first, and I most of the time drove alone because it was not easy for me to just stop and get food or stop and go to the bathroom. I would have to find a truck stop. I couldn't just go to any gas station. So most of the time the kids would go with Jenny. If it was a shorter drive, like 2 or 3 hours, then sometimes one of the kids would come with me. So that was our travel day. We would get to our site usually somewhere between 2 and 4 p.m. It would take, a lot of times I would get there before Jenny and the kids. I would get the RV in place and I would start set up. And I usually wouldn't finish by the time that they got there. And then when they got there, it would go a lot faster. In the beginning, it was like, oh, we're never going to be here again. We have to go see everything.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks in, no, it was 3 weeks. It was our third week when I told Jenny, I said, this is not fun. I'm not enjoying this.
Really?
I'm getting burned out. We're doing stuff every single day.
Wow.
We've got to make a change because like the rate that we're going is not sustainable. So we continued to kind of play with it and tweak it. And so what we settled on was, after a long time of almost kind of like being on vacation, you kind of start to recognize you're just not going to be able to see everything. So it's more just about enjoying where you're at.
Mm.
So Wednesday was a moving day. Typically Thursday, we would go explore. Then Friday might be exploring if there was, it was a fun place. Saturday and Sunday, because it's the weekend and usually busier, we would stay in the campground. We would do homeschool, let the kids play at whatever was there. Monday or Tuesday, probably one of those would be explore, and then the other hanging out. So we typically had 2 to 3 days per week where we were going out, seeing sites, going on hikes, seeing the area. And then the rest of the days would be homeschool. I would be working, doing TLP stuff. So that's kind of the typical breakdown. We got a Planet Fitness membership so that we were, I would say probably 80% of the time we were within a 20-minute drive of a Planet Fitness. And then I had like a fold-up bench and adjustable dumbbells and some bands that we would use if we couldn't do that. But yeah, that's kind of typical week.
Got shredded on the road. No, that's awesome that you kind of fit every aspect of life into your trailer. Home, like kids' education, your health, experiences, you get bikes, fireplaces. It's pretty cool you did that. And I just want to tell you, Derek, I think you're a man to be able to pull and back up a 45-foot trailer. Like when you came to Augusta, so Derek came through Georgia and he stopped at a campsite near where I was living at this time. It was super cool to get to see his trailer, his home. And I was just so impressed that you could back that thing up. I'll also say on his trailer, they had a magnet of the United States. And then almost like a puzzle, each time they went to a new state, you put in a magnet. And you almost filled up every state in the country. Is that right?
Yeah, I think we hit a total of 39.
Wow.
There's a good number of the small states that we didn't hit. And then some like Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio. We only counted it if we like stayed there overnight, not if we drove through. So yeah, didn't hit all of them, but we covered a good chunk.
Yeah. I think you should count the drive-throughs. That counts. how did you plan where you were going to go? Like, were you in one spot and then you pulled out Google Maps and you're like, all right, we're going to go next week. And you just kind of lived on the fly a little bit? Or how did you determine this? What was your overall like roadmap?
Yeah, it's interesting when we like really committed to the idea and started working towards it. I was starting to get a little bit overwhelmed with thinking of everything with the practice, with selling the house, logistically, we had to change some things with the RV to make it a little bit more able to live in it long term. And Jenny's always been really good at saying, "Hey, what can I take off your plate?" And
Hmm.
so we had this map, and I had started trying to figure out how do we maximize this? How do we find our route? So I had this big map of the US. I was putting in like different locations on the map of points of interest to try and decide, okay, what would be a central location here? When she basically was like, "What can I do? What can I take off your plate?" And I was like, if you're willing to, I'm going to turn this over to you. And so she did, planned out every single spot we stayed for the first year. Every site. Times it was not the most optimized or efficient, where we'd go south and then have to go back up north and then south again or something like that. But every time that happened, I would just remind myself, she took this all on her own. And I'm so glad that she was willing to. So that's the answer. Jenny planned essentially every stop and location.
Yeah, Jenny is an all-star. Maybe talk more about that. What was it like, you and Jenny, being parents of your 5 kids, not in school, um, going to new places? Like, I'm sure it took so much teamwork. Maybe speak to what it was like leading your family with Jenny.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. When we were planning for this, I was a little bit nervous. A lot of times when we would go on a vacation, either together or with all the kids, the first couple days would be a little bit hard to work through. I don't know what it has been. I think maybe it's a mixture of expectations and like who's responsible for doing what. A lot of times the first day or two would be a little bit contention, conflict, and stuff, and we'd have to work through it and then enjoy the rest of the time. And I was kind of like, okay, we're going to be around each other essentially 24/7. Like, I don't have a job where I'm leaving. We are always going to be together. And I was a little bit nervous about it. And that definitely happened at times to an extent, but it was the coolest experience because we were around each other so often and so much. We got so good at resolving conflicts quickly. We got better at talking through it and not brush it under the rug and let it fester because this is going to blow up later and we're still around each other. So you're not going to get a break from me. So we got to talk through this. And so our relationship grew so much. And I thought that probably our kids would grow closer or that we might, as a family, become closer. But I didn't anticipate my relationship with Jenny becoming so much stronger. So it was such, I can't think of anything that you could do from like looking at an investment standpoint. Like when you think of our family relationship between my kids and my wife, we had to overcome challenges and work together. And many times we had conversations where I'd say, look, we don't have to do this. We don't have to be traveling and doing this. If this is not working, we can move, we can get a home. What's going well? What's not going well? Let's talk about it. How can we come up with systems to work through things and help each other out? And so there was a lot of those kinds of conversations. And probably one of the things I'm most proud about in our family is that every child has a voice. Just because I'm the dad doesn't mean I know better than them. There's been a good number of times they've had really good ideas and we've gone with it. So, our relationships and our communication across the board grew significantly. And I think I'm so grateful for that because I think that's going to go such a long way for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you have any specific, I mean, you said you had a lot of challenges. Was there any like specific difficulties that you can kind of point to? I mean, it's got to be so hard having
Yeah.
5 little kids in an RV for 2 years, right?
Yes. Yeah, which, I think probably most people could assume, but like before living in the RV, my bubble of like my personal space was maybe like 5 or 10 feet, something like that. When you live in an RV, it's like that shrunk. I was resistant to the shrinking of that bubble for the first couple months, and just the limited amount of space. Like you just can't, we all get so used to having whatever supply of groceries that we want to have. A week ago, I ran out of deodorant and I went to my closet and I grabbed a new one. And Jenny was in there and I was like, how amazing is this? We did not have to go to the store. I didn't have to figure out where are we going to store this. It's here. There's a row of 5 deodorants there, and I just grabbed the next one. So I think that was definitely a big part of convenience or inconvenience that I learned a lot. The lack of personal space was a big thing, but then also just because of the lack of space, things are a little bit more cluttered. We would buy soda and we had it like basically like stacked against the fireplace in the kitchen. And, that takes up walking space. And so, we just get used to like having to maneuver around each other. And when, maybe the first week or two, like that starts getting annoying and frustrating. Over time, you're just like, yeah, it is what it is. And like, yeah, you go first and I'll go around. And so, like, that's something small, but like when you're living in that space for a year or longer, it takes patience. And like I said, with communication, you're around each other all the time. And so you don't get as much personal time. So, what we did, how you would get time is like you just leave and go for a walk. So, the kids would do it at times. Jenny and I we'd go to the gym in the mornings. Sometimes we'd walk, but we would always, the deal was that Jenny made dinner. I usually worked in some form. And then after dinner, it was the kids' job to clean up and we would go and walk together. So it's just little ways of how do you find a balance? How do you try and maintain personal relationships and communicate well with each other when, there's this lack of space and you can get in each other's way quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, I bet the skills it taught your siblings, like in relation to each other, is, super powerful. I'm sure. Like, how do your kids look at this trip? Would you say were they just like, "Oh, I'm a kid. I'm going to get in the van and go where my parents say," or did they kind of really internalize, like, we live on the road, and did they kind of identify with like that type of life? I'm just really curious what it was like for them.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, we had done trips in the RV before. And so starting out, it just kind of feels like maybe kind of a long vacation. And then eventually, when I talked about like settling in and not being go, 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 and we start doing more homeschool, we start having a little bit more structure in the week and kind of figure out things. That's when they kind of start to be like, okay, this is our lifestyle now. And then talking to people, when they meet people or we're talking to people and they find out that we're living on the road and doing this, they start to maybe see themselves in that way a little bit. I would be interested. I've thought of this like, people have asked them questions, and I'm usually around when they get asked questions and stuff. But like, even a few weeks ago, my father in law asked, do you guys miss living in the trailer? And like several of the kids said yes.
Hmm.
And that was kind of cool. It was like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
okay. They're looking back on this with fond memories, and not just looking at it as before they lived in a small trailer and now they're in a home where they have their own rooms and a lot more space. So I think overall it was very positive. I think part of the reason too is because of what I talked about, the communication. I let them know we don't have to do this. This is everybody gets a vote here. And if we decide, hey, it makes sense, let's throw in the towel, we can. And it was pretty much almost always unanimous. Yeah, we want to be doing this. And so that allowed them to buy in to it and make them feel free. There was times that it was hard and challenges where some of the kids expressed some of those things, and then towards the end, as we kind of were wrapping things up, we had more discussions about the idea of wrapping things up. And again, conversations when, like I said, when we were out about 6 months, we were like, this is actually really cool. maybe we should do another year. And so the kids were involved in that conversation. And I think because of that, it allowed them to feel like they had a voice and they weren't forced to go on this trip. The other thing that was also really helpful is almost everyone we would meet would say, like when they would learn and they would talk to the kids, they would say, "Do you guys realize how lucky you are? Like, I can't believe your parents are doing this." Like, it was really, really nice that people would reinforce that. And so that's been like kind of a cool lesson for me when I meet other kids and families to say, "Oh man, do you realize how great your parents are?" Little things like that I think can go a long way, and we don't probably hear that very much growing
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Love that. Can you share? I know this is probably very hard to do because you every week went to a cool new place for 2 years, but can you share a couple like highlights, like of your favorite places you went or experiences that you guys had?
It's interesting because one thing that we learned to realize is that a lot of your experience depends on your expectation. If you go somewhere having a very high expectation and then it's average or maybe even above average, you're disappointed. And if you go somewhere and you have like no expectation because you have no idea what's there, and then you end up finding something that's kind of cool, it's like, wow, I had no idea. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Um, so in the beginning, we had different expectations, and over time, we just kind of learned. I remember talking to my dad several times on the phone, and he's like, "Okay, so where are you going next week? What's there?" And I was just always like, "I don't know. I
No.
have the address. We'll get there, and then once we get there, we'll figure out what we want to do and what there is to see." But a couple places in New Hampshire, there was a state park called Franconia Notch State Park. We didn't know that this was there, but it was incredible. It had all of these gorges. I can't remember if it's called the Great White Mountains or White Mountain National Forest in that area. It was really pretty. They had biking trails, waterfalls. It was a huge park. It was really fun to explore, and we had no idea that it was there. So that was really, really fun. The Redwoods is another
Mm,
one that just blew my mind. I felt like a fictional character. You watch these videos of this character in this forest and the trees are just ginormous, because the character is very small. Like I felt like a little hobbit,
yeah.
walking around in the redwoods, and it just felt so magical. Like it's the middle of the day, but it's very dark because the trees are so tall and
Wow.
so big. So I loved being in the redwoods.
Wow. Was it the Redwoods or Sequoia? They're on my bucket list for next summer.
We went to both. So I liked redwoods more. They have this kind of cool highway system. There's a main highway, and then there's kind of like this scenic highway that goes adjacent to it where you go more through the trees and stuff. So I enjoyed the redwoods more. Sequoia was still fun, but I almost felt like Sequoia was a little bit more like a large national park with a lot of people. And it
Mm,
could have been the date, but for whatever reason, redwoods felt a little bit more secluded and private. It was just a fun feeling.
yeah. Man, that sounds awesome. Did you ever run into trouble? Like have something unexpected happen? Like find yourself in a bit, whether it's with a trailer or like somewhere like in your journey, did you like ever have a moment where you were worried or something happened?
There wasn't anything huge, but there were a few things I can think of off the top of my head. There was one time I was driving and the GPS on my phone, I used a trucker's app to try and navigate and stay on highways. I could put in the height of the trailer so I didn't go under any short bridges or on any short, windy roads. And I think it was in West Virginia where it navigated me on this. I don't even like thinking about it. It was on this side road that was going right next to a river, and it was a small road. And the whole time I was just thinking, there was no traffic. I did not see a person, but the whole time I'm thinking, if there is a corner that I can't get around, I don't know what I'm going to do. I would have to back up the trailer the whole way. There's nowhere to turn around. And then I was just like, if there is a car that we have to get around each other, this is a one lane way and there's a river on one side. I don't know what is going to happen. And so the whole time I'm just like cussing to myself and like, how much longer? And I'm like so mad that this app directed me on this Luckily I got to this off of that road and I was able to figure out how to get back onto a highway, but that was not fun. Traffic was never fun.
Mm.
Anytime there's some sort of a detour or a road closed and the app couldn't route me around it was very, I still get, like, even now when I see somebody driving with a big trailer RV behind him, I'd still get this little pit in my stomach. um, so that
Yeah.
was tough. I had a tire blowout at one point, which wasn't too big of a deal. I was able to change the tire and that worked fine. The worst RV experience was when we were in, the trailer started stinking.
Mm.
And for anyone that has camped in an RV, the black tank is where the poop and pee goes, and then you have gray tank where your shower and dishwashing water goes, and you have to empty those tanks and try and clean them out and stuff like that. And there was a while where I would empty the tank, and then during the night, it would stink. We would wake up in the night like, what is that smell? Why is it so bad? And that went on for a couple months until I found out that there was a leak in our black tank,
Oh,
and
wow.
it had gone through the underbelly. The underbelly is basically like this layer that goes under the trailer that compartmentalizes everything, and there's a little bit of insulation under it as well. But that basically was soaked. We were in Dallas. My parents came out to Dallas. We were there for the solar eclipse, so that was fun. But I had to get a RV guy out. We replaced the tank and got everything all fixed. And then we went to our next place in Big Bend, Texas, which is southwest Texas, close to the
Hmm.
border. Very hot. And the underbelly had come off while I was driving and was dragging by the time that I got there. And
Mm.
then, anyway, still some issues, but wind and storms are a whole different experience in
Oh,
an
yeah.
RV. We had an awning and a tent that was partially connected to the trailer. The awning blew off, and it's tough to sleep sometimes when you just wake up and you're like, oh, did we blow over? So there was never anything that catastrophically went wrong or that was really bad. But, luckily I expected a lot of those pitfalls. Like, I had followed groups and people that had done those things. So I just knew that was going to be part of the experience, is having to deal with some of those things. So overall, we ended up doing just fine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Sounds like a stinky problem.
Yeah,
Question
no
for you.
fun.
So you sell your practice, you're on the road, you're not doing dentistry anymore, which was, I mean, that was your job for several years, right? I mean, you're doing coaching, and I'm sure you had some, real estate responsibilities to handle, but what was it like going from a career to largely, I mean, no more dentistry? Was that difficult? Was it exciting? Did you ever look back? What was your kind of relationship with your former job?
Yeah, I've shared a little bit of this in podcasts like a year or longer ago, but it's been a long time since I've talked about it. And so I have a little bit different perspective now. Some things remain the same. I have never once, it's been over 2 years. I have never once thought, man, it would be nice to do some dentistry. My hands are just itching to do some dentistry. When I say that, it's not like I didn't enjoy dentistry. I loved dentistry. Dental school was so fun for me. I loved clinical things. I loved crown preps and root canals and implants. Like, even dentures, I thought were fun. So I loved dentistry. I loved working with my hands. I loved the challenges that it presented, but I just haven't missed it at all. And obviously, there's the things that are hard that come with dentistry that has been nice to not have to deal with. I don't have to deal with any post-op sensitivity or pain. I don't have to deal with a patient that doesn't want to get x-rays. I don't have an employee that complains about somebody else and gets in a fight or thinks that they deserve a raise. And I loved my team. I don't miss dentistry. I miss my team. I still text almost all of them on a monthly basis. I really enjoyed my relationships with them. It was interesting because I remember where we were. We were in Niagara Falls. And so I don't remember what month that was, maybe about 4 months in, 3 or 4 months into our travels. And it was going really well. I was able to pick up more clients because I had more time, enjoyed doing it. But there was kind of this strange feeling that, like, I felt kind of, this feels weird to say, I felt kind of stupid. I kind of felt like, wait, what's the money for? Like, I've been working towards these financial goals and everything. Like, I've had this idea of getting out of the rat race ever since I read Rich Dad Poor Dad in high school. And now I'm out of the rat race, but I'm like, wait a second, I'm ramping up TLP, I'm doing more, I'm enjoying it, and I kind of felt like, is this what my life is meant for? Like, this is the best use of my time and energy. And it was a bit of a dark time to kind of go through some of those thoughts. And like, there was even thoughts of just like, well, gosh, I've been so focused on this for so long, and like, this isn't going to change my life at all at any point. Like, I have the freedom. Did I focus on the wrong thing in life? And it's not like, I mean, I had worked 3 days a week, essentially the whole career, and spent a lot of time with the kids. So it's not like I missed out on the kids and family, but it was a strange feeling to go through that. And what I ended up learning is, do you know what? I'm good at this game and I like playing the game. And if those two things are true, I'm just going to let myself play the game. And so it was like, it almost was like somehow a moral, ethical dilemma of using my time and energy in the best way. And I felt stupid. But then I was just like, you know what? I'm going to stop overthinking this. I'm just going to do it because I enjoy it. And I like pushing myself. It was probably a few months after that because I remember we were in Savannah, Georgia. I woke up one night in the middle of the night and I'd been kind of like, okay, I'm going to let myself play the game. And I'm like, what do I really want? It was like 3 in the morning. I started walking around the campground because I couldn't think. And I just was like, what do I want? And then it just hit me. I just want to grow. That's it. I just want to grow. It was like this eureka moment for me to realize that. And so it was like, okay, well, if the money doesn't matter and I just grow, what do I want to do? It was like, I want to be a better coach. And how can I do that? I want to find a good coach for myself. And I've had several episodes where I talked about working with Steve Hardison. I worked with him for a year where I flew out every other week from wherever we were in the country to his house in Phoenix and had a coaching session with him. So that led to more growth and less guilt in my life, more perceived freedom, and is one of the greatest investments and decisions I've ever made.
Yeah, so that kind of pulled you out of that conundrum you were in, and that's, you would say, has given you a lot of fulfillment since then?
Yes, because ultimately it led to growth in myself. I thought that the coaching was to make myself a better coach, but it was completely focused on growing myself as a person, looking inside myself and seeing where the weaknesses are. And a lot of it was focused on, I was feeling a lot of guilt in my life over certain things. And I was able to realize that I was creating all of that guilt. And any time that I perceived that I didn't have freedom, that was not true. It was only a perception. So, one of the greatest things that I learned in that entire experience is that I am 100% in control of my experience in life. And I can choose what I believe. And so, in a bit of a strange way, an example, if I break my ankle, I can get myself to believe that I did that on purpose and I wanted it to happen because I wanted the growth that would be accompanied by it. So that's just one small example, but like, if I can do that, what can I do on a daily basis that's going to lead me to just really enjoying and optimizing my satisfaction and my happiness in life?
Yeah. That's awesome. That's radical ownership.
So It's just been a really fun experience, and it's led me to my point now where a few weeks ago Jenny asked me, she was like, what goals do you have? What are you working on? And I told her, I said, really my only focus and goal right now is trying to optimize my schedule in a way that leads to the most fulfillment and happiness. So and there's basically like three different buckets. There is family. So like I try as much as possible to optimize being around the kids when they're home and not at school. The number two bucket is work. I still really enjoy coaching and conversations and working towards building things. And then the last one is hobbies. I've really gotten into tennis. I enjoy golf. So I'm basically my only goal is just continuing to kind of play with adjusting each of those buckets week by week and finding a balance, tweaking things to try and optimize, like I said, my fulfillment and happiness. And that's kind of a fun spot to be in life where that's kind of my only intentional focus on a daily and weekly basis.
Yeah, that's awesome. So your family's growing together, you're having these experiences, you're developing a lot personally. What's it like wrapping up this big experience? Like you had the 2-year mark, you're coming close to it. I mean, did you get butterflies again? Like, okay, here's a new door we need to change, or what was it like kind of wrapping up your trip and becoming a normal live in a house type person again?
Yes, it's so interesting that you said that because I remember talking with Jenny and saying, I feel the same feeling now as when we headed out on the road. Where I was like, I'm scared of this and this is unknown and stuff. It was like, okay, we've gotten really good at living in this environment. Are we really going to just live in one place and stay there? And we've grown so close as a family. What's going to happen? Right? There's kind of these fears, but it's like that low level confidence that's like, no, I think this is the right direction to go. Yes, there were things that I was looking forward to, things that I was nervous about. For three out of our five kids, none of them had attended public school because we started homeschooling in 2020. So for three of them, it was a new experience to go to public school, and the other two, it had been several years, and so they're excited, nervous about it. So it was a lot of mixed feelings, and those last few weeks were emotional in ways. There were times where I was like, similar to kind of what I said about dentistry. I don't miss the dentistry. I miss my team. There's things about dentistry that were really fun, but things that were not fun. So, those last few weeks, it was like, oh, that'll be nice not to have to drive and have travel days and figure out the logistics every week. But then there was like experiences, I still remember like one of the last travel days with my daughter, and she was with me, and it was just this one-on-one time with us talking several hours, and it was like it just was kind of this realization like this is not really going to happen anymore. Like it's going to be much less common, these experiences, this closeness as a family. So I knew we were giving things up, but again, I knew it was the right direction. It was what we wanted to go, the way we wanted to go. It's been a little bit of, in my terms, like loosening the leash. Not like we were restrictive of the kids, but we were close as a family, and going now where they have a social life. They go to school. They have friends that come over to our house, or they go to their friend's house. So we spend less time together. But then we've kind of found things every Sunday afternoon. We have a tradition of getting together. We sit in the front room on the couches. And we have no agenda of what to talk about. It's a time period where we will reflect on the week, and we just talk about like, how was your week? Was there any experiences that you have that you want to share? Is there any questions you've been thinking of? And everyone is welcome to share. So that's been fun. So it's like, that's one way that we're kind of finding a way to hold on to something that we had in the RV, because we had a lot of those kinds of conversations in the RV, and now it's like, okay, that's something that we want to continue, but we have to be more intentional. It's not going to just come naturally and inherently. Before it was like we're all together in the trailer all the time, and now it's like, we live in this house that's spread apart, and we have to like make an effort to be all in the same room at the same time together.
Yeah. Do you ever, is there anything that, I mean, you missed the closeness. Is there anything else that you kind of missed from the trip? Do you feel it kind of met your expectations? It was what you thought it was going to be?
Yeah, it's interesting because since I've had a few months to kind of reflect and think on it and stuff, I feel like this is my greatest accomplishment in life. There's a lot of things that I feel good about, and my best decision was marrying Jenny. But as far as my greatest accomplishment, this is the thing that I'm the most proud of because it took a lot of work. The last episode that we did, we talked all about that work and preparation that goes into being able to even have the opportunity. That's number one. But then number two, having the courage to actually go through with it. There's a good number of people that could do something like this, but they don't because
Hmm.
whatever doesn't match up, or they're nervous, or like just too much getting out of the comfort zone to live such an unorthodox lifestyle for a period of time. So that's number two. And then number three is that not only did we do it, but we just thrived. We learned, we grew closer. We had such incredible experiences in context of Die with Zero, of taking advantage of the decades or the buckets. Like that is a time period, a bucket that we only had this window of a few years to do with everyone and make it really work in the scheme of their lives. Such a good investment. So it's something that I'm so proud that we did, and we just nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah, you did. I'll share a little sappy take from this, but I remember you texted me. It was probably just like a month after you sold your practice. I sold my practice after you did. And I think it was a picture of a lake somewhere. And it was a Monday morning. And basically, you said, I'm not going to work this morning. And you said, I guess in the RV community, there's full timers. Is that what you call them? So
Uh-huh.
everyone stays at the campgrounds on the weekend, and then everyone goes back Sunday night. But then there's the full timers that don't go back, and you were
Yeah.
a full timer, and that was such a cool text. And it actually made me think of that night. I think it was in our junior year. We got back from CE in Texas and dental school, and you're just like, "I'm going to be free in 10 years," and I was like, "Okay, I'm going to mark the date." And when you sent me that text, it was just kind of completing that journey in a sense. It's like you made it, your family's free, you're living on your own terms. So that was really, really cool experience for me to see for you. But is there anything else that I didn't ask that I should have that you want to kind of talk about your trip?
I don't think so. Yeah, I feel good about the questions that we covered, and I shared a lot of the things that I have thought about since then came out in the conversation.
Cool. What would you say is an actionable step that a newer dentist or a dentist that's listening to this cool experience you've had, what is something they can do to move towards this incredible experience that you've had if they want it to?
Yeah, great question. Go back and listen to the last episode. This episode was just completely about the experience, but the last episode was all about the preparation and making something like this happen. So, what I would say to that is it's easy for people to listen to experiences and stories like this and to say, gosh, that's so overwhelming. I can't even fathom getting to that point or how that would take place, like all the logistics that have to work out to make something like that happen. But you forget that it's all broken down to what you said in the last episode when you said, okay, here's my timeline. Here's the total amount I need. Let's break that down year by year. What does that have to look like? And then if I know what that has to look like, what does my monthly production have to look like in my practice? I would speculate that there's less than 1% of practice owners that if they were asked a question of how much production do you need to hit each month in order to hit your long-term financial goals, they wouldn't know. So I think, and I'm not trying to be critical, but I'm trying to say it's actually simpler than you think. It's not this big pie in the sky idea that just happens magically on its own. It is something that, when broken down in its most simple form, can come down to what do I need to focus on today to get there? And it's easy to think, oh, well, gosh, well, I could focus on today, but what about tomorrow? What about next week and then month? Well, guess what? The great thing is you don't even have to worry about all that because a month from now, it's going to be today. So all you
Yeah.
have to do is focus on today. If you have that vision and you're working towards it every day, you continue to do that. And that's what gets you there.
Yeah. Love that. Well, awesome. Derek, what a phenomenal experience. So cool that you did that. And you ended up selling your RV recently. Is that right?
It is still for sale. There's a couple that came and looked at it 2 days ago, and I'm kind of on the fence. Maybe I should just keep it and we could figure out some things. My wife and I drove yesterday. We took this 5 hour drive through the mountains looking at the fall colors and stuff. And there's people camping with their RVs, but then it's kind of a rough road. So to navigate it again, it's like some of those things. So I'm still a little bit torn. So we'll check back in and see what happens.
Yeah. Well, if you sell it, just tell people about your gray box problems for full disclosure. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Blackwater. It's the
Black
Blackwater
box.
tank. Yeah.
Sweet, man. Thanks, Derek.
Well,
All
thanks,
right.
Steve.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Hey, everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you want to ask Derek about any specifics in his cool journey or on how to get there, you can email him or you can reach any of us at the Lifestyle Practice just on our website. If you hit the submission link, it'll send your notification to us and we'll respond right away and love to connect with you about your big goals or wherever you're at. I'd be happy to connect with you. Next episode, we'll, I think, probably switch seats and talk a little more about maximizing life, and we will catch you guys then. Thanks so much.